be a first squadron and RPAS flight school, a Transport Canada listed RPAS ground and flight school. Check out our drone services and courses at aurapilot.ca.
RPAS Flight Operation Executive Course X01. The Flight Operations Executive. The Flight Operations Executive is the person delegated the responsibility of ensuring an RPAS operation is compliant with CARS Section 9 Transport Canada regulations. This course will teach the required operational logistics to maintaining a fleet of drone, provide your organization with RPAS operations within TC Canada requirements. This course requires RPAS Advanced Certification. The duties and responsibilities are many-fold. You must ensure the operations, staff, pilots, visual observers and PIC pilots in charge are fit to fly, up to date in training and competent. The Fox Flight Ops Executive is responsible to ensure flights operations are conducted safely and develop procedures, manuals, checklists and emergency plans in case of operational failures. In this course you will be tested on the regulations, managing pilots, staff and crews including maintenance and dealing with regulators' expectations like the SFOC Special Operations Certificate.
Risk Management, Flight Operations. The RPAS manager is responsible for risk management and ensuring all operations are conducted safely and meet the RPAS regulatory requirements. Division 2. General Prohibition. Reckless or negligent operation. 900.06 No person shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system in such a reckless or negligent manner as to endanger or be likely to endanger aviation safety or the safety of any person.
RPAS Registration, Flight Operations. Subpart 1, Small Remotely Piloted Aircraft. Division 1, General Provision. Application 901.01. This subpart applies in respect of the operation of remotely piloted aircraft systems that include small remotely piloted aircraft. Division 2, Registration of Remotely Piloted Aircraft. Registration 901.02. No person shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system unless the remotely piloted aircraft is registered in accordance with this division. Registration number 901.03. No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system unless the registration number issued in accordance with Section 901.05 is clearly visible on the remotely piloted aircraft. Qualifications to be registered owner of a remotely piloted aircraft. 901.04. 1. Subject to subsection 2. A person is qualified to be the registered owner of a remotely piloted aircraft if they are a citizen of Canada, b. a permanent resident of Canada, c. a corporation incorporated under the territorial, provincial or federal laws of Canada, or d. a municipal, provincial or federal entity. 2. No individual is qualified to be the registered owner of a remotely piloted aircraft unless that individual is at least 14 years of age. Registration requirements. 901.05. 1. The Minister shall, on receipt of an application submitted in accordance with subsection 2, register a remotely piloted aircraft if the applicant is qualified to be the registered owner of the aircraft. 2. The application shall include the following information. If the applicant is an individual. 1. The applicant's name and address. 2. The applicant's date of birth, and 3. An indication as to whether the applicant is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident of Canada. b. If the applicant is incorporated. I. The entity's legal name and address, and e. The name and title of the person making the application. c. If the applicant is Her Majesty in right of Canada or a province. I. The name of the government body, and e. The name and title of the person making the application. D. An indication as to whether the aircraft was purchased or built by the applicant. E. The date of purchase of the aircraft by the applicant, if applicable. F. The manufacturer and model of the aircraft, if applicable. G. The serial number of the aircraft, if applicable. H. The category of aircraft, such as a fixed-wing aircraft, rotary-wing aircraft, hybrid aircraft or lighter-than-air aircraft. I. The maximum takeoff weight of the aircraft, and J. Any Canadian registration number previously issued in respect of the aircraft. 3. When the Minister registers a remotely piloted aircraft, the Minister shall issue to the registered owner of the aircraft a certificate of registration that includes A. A registration number. B. The serial number of the aircraft, if applicable, and C. If the manufacturer has made a declaration in accordance with Section 901.76 in respect of the model of remotely piloted aircraft system of which the aircraft is an element, the operations referred to in subsection 901.69, 1, for which the declaration was made. Register of remotely piloted aircraft. 901.06 The Minister shall establish and maintain a register of remotely piloted aircraft, in which there shall be entered, in respect of each aircraft for which a certificate of registration has been issued under Section 901.05. A. The name and address of the registered owner. B. The registration number referred to in paragraph 901.05, 3, and C. Such other particulars concerning the aircraft as the Minister determines necessary for registration of the remotely piloted aircraft.
RPAS Flight Rules, Flight Operations. Division 3, General Operating and Flight Rules. Visual Line of Sight. 901.11, 1, subject to subsection 2. No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system unless the pilot or a visual observer has the aircraft in visual line of sight at all times during flight. 2. A pilot may operate a remotely piloted aircraft system without the pilot or a visual observer having the aircraft in visual line of sight if the operation is conducted in accordance with a Special Flight Operations Certificate, RPAS, issued under Section 903.03. Prohibition. Emergency Security Perimeter. 901.12, 1. No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft over or within the security perimeter established by a public authority in response to an emergency. 2. Subsection 1. Does not apply to the operation of a remotely piloted aircraft for the purpose of an operation to save human life, a police operation, a firefighting operation or other operation that is conducted in the service of a public authority. Prohibition. Canadian domestic airspace. 901.13 No pilot operating a remotely piloted aircraft shall cause the aircraft to leave Canadian domestic airspace. Controlled or restricted airspace. 901.14, 1, subject to subsection 901.71, 1. No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft in controlled airspace. 2. No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft in Class F Special Use Restricted Airspace, as specified in the Designated Airspace Handbook, unless authorized to do so by the person specified for that purpose in that standard. Opening parenthesis. 3. For the purposes of subsection 2, a person specified in the Designated Airspace Handbook may authorize the operation of a remotely piloted aircraft when activities on the ground or in the airspace are not hazardous to aircraft operating in that airspace or access by aircraft to that airspace does not jeopardize national security interests. Inadvertent entry into controlled or restricted airspace. 901.15 A pilot of a remotely piloted aircraft shall ensure that the appropriate air traffic control unit Flight service station or user agency is notified immediately any time the aircraft is no longer under the pilot's control and inadvertent entry into controlled airspace or Class F special use restricted airspace, as specified in the designated airspace handbook, occurs or is likely to occur. Flight safety. 901.16 A pilot that operates a remotely piloted aircraft system shall immediately cease operations if aviation safety or the safety of any person is endangered or likely to be endangered. Right of way. 901.17 A pilot of a remotely piloted aircraft shall give way to power-driven heavier than air aircraft, airships, gliders and balloons at all times. Avoidance of collision. 901.18 No pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft in such proximity to another aircraft as to create a risk of collision. We are 1st Squadron and RPAS Flight School. Check out our drone services and courses at aurapilot.ca.